Welcome to the London Perspective, where we explore the latest trends, events, and issues from a British perspective. My name is Stefan, and I am your host. Today, we will be discussing a topic that has been on everyone's mind lately: ChatGPT and its potential to solve gun control in the USA. As many of you may know, ChatGPT is a cutting-edge artificial intelligence technology that has been making waves in the tech industry. Recently, there has been a lot of talk about the possibility of using ChatGPT to help solve the ongoing issue of gun control in the USA. In this episode, we will be discussing the potential benefits and drawbacks of using this technology to address this complex issue. As a British citizen, I have always been struck by the stark difference in gun laws between the UK and the USA. Growing up, I never had to worry about the threat of gun violence, and it was not until I visited the USA that I fully appreciated the gravity of the issue. I remember visiting a friend in New York City and being shocked by the number of people carrying firearms openly on the streets. It was a stark reminder of the reality of gun violence in the USA and the need for a solution. In recent news, there has been a renewed push for stricter gun laws in the USA following a string of mass shootings. The Biden administration has proposed a number of measures aimed at reducing gun violence, including universal background checks and a ban on assault weapons. However, many lawmakers and advocacy groups are pushing for more innovative solutions, such as using ChatGPT to help identify potential threats and prevent mass shootings before they occur. To fully understand the potential of ChatGPT to solve gun control in the USA, it's important to have a basic understanding of the history of gun control in the country. The Second Amendment to the US Constitution, ratified in 1791, guarantees the right to bear arms. However, this right has been the subject of ongoing debate and legal challenges for centuries. In the 20th century, there have been a number of federal and state laws enacted to regulate the sale, possession, and use of firearms. However, the effectiveness of these laws has been the subject of much debate, and many argue that more needs to be done to address the issue of gun violence in the USA. One of the most tragic aspects of gun violence in the USA is the impact it has on certain groups of people. Communities of color, particularly African Americans, are disproportionately affected by gun violence. In fact, according to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, African Americans are 10 times more likely to be killed by gun violence than non-Hispanic whites. This is a devastating reality that highlights the urgent need for effective solutions to address gun violence in the USA. Another related issue that ties in with the topic of gun control is mental health. Studies have shown that a significant number of mass shootings are carried out by individuals with mental health issues. It's important to note that the vast majority of people with mental health issues do not commit acts of violence, but it's clear that addressing mental health is a critical component of any solution to gun violence. ChatGPT could potentially play a role in identifying individuals at risk of committing acts of violence and getting them the help they need before it's too late. As with any complex issue, there are many different opinions and perspectives on the use of ChatGPT to solve gun control in the USA. Some argue that it's a necessary step to address the ongoing problem of gun violence, while others express concerns about privacy and civil liberties. There are also concerns about the potential for bias in the technology, and the possibility of false positives leading to innocent people being unfairly targeted. It's important to consider all sides of the debate before making a decision on the use of ChatGPT to address gun control. As ChatGPT technology continues to evolve and improve, the possibilities for its use in addressing gun control become more and more promising. In the future, we may see the use of ChatGPT in real-time monitoring of social media and other online platforms to identify potential threats. Additionally, the technology could be used in background checks for firearm purchases, and to flag individuals who may be at risk of committing acts of violence. It's important to stay informed and engaged as these developments unfold. If you're concerned about gun violence in the USA and want to make a difference, there are a number of ways to get involved. You can reach out to your elected representatives and voice your support for stricter gun laws and the use of ChatGPT technology to address the issue. Additionally, you can support organizations working to reduce gun violence and advocate for change. Every little bit helps, so don't be afraid to take action and make your voice heard. Gun violence in the USA has a profound cultural impact, with many Americans growing up with a constant fear of being affected by it. It's something that touches everyone, from the families of victims to communities affected by the aftermath of mass shootings. The use of ChatGPT technology to address this issue could potentially help ease this cultural fear and bring a sense of safety back to communities. The impact of gun violence on the economy is staggering. According to estimates, gun violence costs the US economy over $229 billion annually. This includes costs associated with medical care, law enforcement, and lost productivity. Implementing effective solutions to address gun violence, such as the use of ChatGPT technology, could potentially have a significant economic benefit. Gun control has long been a highly politicized issue in the USA. The use of ChatGPT technology to address the issue could potentially take some of the politics out of the equation, as it would be based on data and evidence rather than emotions and opinions. However, it's important to remember that any solution to gun violence will inevitably have political implications and require support from lawmakers. The legal implications of using ChatGPT technology to address gun control in the USA are complex. There are concerns about potential violations of privacy and civil liberties, as well as issues surrounding the potential for bias in the technology. It's important to ensure that any use of ChatGPT is done in a way that is legal, ethical, and respects the rights of all individuals. The environmental impact of gun violence is often overlooked, but it's important to consider. For example, the manufacture and disposal of firearms can contribute to pollution and environmental degradation. Additionally, mass shootings and other acts of gun violence can have a devastating impact on natural habitats and wildlife. As we work to address gun violence, it's important to consider the environmental impact of our actions. The ethical implications of using ChatGPT technology to address gun control are complex and multifaceted. There are concerns about privacy, civil liberties, and the potential for bias in the technology. Additionally, there are questions about how to ensure that the technology is used for the greater good and not for nefarious purposes. It's important to consider these ethical implications and have open and honest conversations about them. The social impact of gun violence in the USA is significant and far-reaching. Communities affected by gun violence often suffer from trauma and fear, and the aftermath of mass shootings can divide and polarize society. The use of ChatGPT technology to address gun violence could potentially help bring communities together and reduce the social impact of this issue. The use of ChatGPT technology to address gun control in the USA has the potential to be a game changer. It could help identify potential threats and prevent mass shootings before they occur, and it could be used in background checks for firearm purchases. Additionally, it could be used to flag individuals who may be at risk of committing acts of violence. The technological impact of this issue is significant and will continue to evolve as the technology improves. The medical impact of gun violence in the USA is significant, with thousands of people being injured or killed every year. The use of ChatGPT technology to address gun violence could potentially help reduce the number of injuries and deaths by identifying potential threats and preventing mass shootings before they occur. Additionally, ChatGPT could be used to identify individuals at risk of committing acts of violence and getting them the help they need before it's too late. The educational impact of gun violence in the USA is significant, with many children and young people growing up with a constant fear of being affected by it. This can have a detrimental effect on their mental health and well-being. The use of ChatGPT technology to address gun violence could potentially help reduce the number of injuries and deaths, which in turn could help ease the educational impact of this issue. The psychological impact of gun violence in the USA is significant, with many people experiencing trauma, fear, and anxiety as a result. The use of ChatGPT technology to address gun violence could potentially help reduce the number of injuries and deaths, which in turn could help ease the psychological impact of this issue. Additionally, ChatGPT could be used to identify individuals at risk of committing acts of violence and getting them the help they need before it's too late. In conclusion, the issue of gun control in the USA is complex and multifaceted. The use of ChatGPT technology to address this issue has the potential to be a game changer, but it's important to consider the potential benefits and drawbacks before making a decision. We encourage our listeners to stay informed and engaged on this issue, and to reach out to your elected representatives to voice your support for stricter gun laws and the use of ChatGPT technology to address the issue. Together, we can work towards a safer and more peaceful future. Thank you for listening to this episode of The London Perspective. We hope you found it informative and engaging. If you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, please let us know. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world from a London perspective. Thanks for listening.